All right, imagine a world where food is, get this, optional. Sounds kind of sci-fi.
Like straight out of a movie.
Totally. But today, we're diving deep into something that could make that sci-fi a reality. Bioelectricity, quantum singularities, a whole new energy source for our bodies.
It really pushes the boundaries. We're talking theoretical research here, the edge of what we know.
Exactly, we're going headfirst into the unknown. Quantum
Right.
singularities, electromagnetism, these are things that even physicists struggle to wrap their heads around.
For sure, but that's what makes it so exciting, right?
Absolutely. We'll try to break down these complex ideas together and see if we can make some sense of them.
The core idea we're looking at is this. Could our cells absorb and use electromagnetic energy directly? Maybe even replace or supplement the food we eat.
Whoa, wait. You're saying there might be a way to power our bodies, like without needing food?
Yeah, that's the hypothesis. And if it's true, the implications are, well, huge. Think about a future where we could tap into external electromagnetic fields for energy. No more grocery shopping, no more calorie counting, just pure energy going straight to our cells.
Okay, I'm hooked. But how would that even work? Where do these quantum singularities come into play?
They're the key to all of this. Quantum singularities, or QSs, we think they act like tiny organized centers within our cells. They store and distribute charge, almost like miniature power stations, but instead of burning fuel, they might be able to capture energy from those electromagnetic fields we talked about.
So instead of breaking down food for energy, our cells could just grab energy from their surroundings.
Exactly. And there's a revised energy equation that tries to explain how this whole thing might work. It goes like this. Energy equals the charge around the singularity times the singularity's momentum divided by its charge, and then all of that is multiplied by something called magnetic repulsion volume.
Okay, that sounds like a lot. What are the key things to take away from that?
It's less about the math and more about the idea. It's basically explaining how these QS systems might store and release energy. How much energy a QS can hold depends on how much of the electromagnetic field or radiation it can capture. Picture it like a container. The bigger the container, the more it can hold.
So more charge in the QS equals more energy stored, kind of like a battery. What about the magnetic repulsion volume thing?
Great question. Think of that as the space around the QS that's influenced by its magnetic field. Bigger volume means more electromagnetic energy it could potentially interact with and absorb. It's about these singularities harnessing the energy around them.
Got it. So it's not just about the charge of the QS itself, but also the space it controls with its magnetic field. So where does all the electrical activity in our bodies, the bioelectricity, fit into all of this?
That's the really interesting part. This equation tries to connect how much energy these QSs can store with the actual electrical activity we see in living things. Bioelectricity, it's behind everything, nerve impulses, muscle contractions.
Yeah, our bodies are already electric in a way. But how would these QSs actually capture the energy from those fields to power all that stuff?
Well, that's what researchers are trying to find out. There's been talk of experiments to see if cells can directly absorb and use electromagnetic energy. Imagine exposing different kinds of cells to different kinds of electromagnetic fields.
Like shining different kinds of light on them.
Exactly. Low frequency and magnetic fields, infrared, red light, even radio waves and microwaves. They'd use cells that need a lot of energy, like human neurons, muscle cells, even some bioelectric sensitive organisms like certain bacteria. They're known for being tough and regenerating well.
So basically giving them a dose of electromagnetic energy and seeing if they can, I don't know, eat it.
Yeah, something like that. And they'd measure things like ATP levels. That's an indicator of cellular energy, membrane potential, which is the difference in electric charge across a cell's membrane. And they'd even try to map out the bioelectric fields of those cells.
But how would you know for sure that the changes they're seeing are actually from those fields and not something else?
Careful controls, that's the key. They'd compare the cells exposed to those electromagnetic fields with other cells that are in normal conditions, and even some that are deprived of nutrients. That way, they can isolate the effects of that electromagnetic energy.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's say these experiments show that cells can absorb this energy. What's next?
That's where things get even more interesting. The next big challenge would be to figure out how that energy is being used inside the cell. That's where they'd need to develop a mathematical model, a way to describe how QSs store, distribute, and release all that electromagnetic energy they've absorbed.
So even if we see cells absorbing energy, we need a model to figure out how they're actually putting it to work.
Exactly, and it's no easy task.
Yeah.
That model has to consider a bunch of things like how much energy is stored in the QS, the frequency of those electromagnetic waves, how efficiently the energy is being converted, even how the cell's membrane potential changes as it absorbs that charge. It's about connecting that quantum world of the QS with the biological world of the cell.
Okay, starting to get the picture here. So we're talking about a whole new way of thinking about energy, where our bodies could be tapping into the electromagnetic fields all around us.
Exactly. It challenges how we've always thought about how living things get energy. It opens up all these new possibilities for understanding how life and the universe are connected.
This is all, honestly, it's a lot to take in. Still feels kind of like science fiction, though.
I get it. But remember, we're exploring the edges of what might be possible here. Even if this specific hypothesis doesn't turn out to be true, just the research itself could lead to incredible discoveries. Things like our understanding of bioelectricity and what it means for our health.
True, we're just scratching the surface here, but I think we need to take a break and let our listeners process all this mind-blowing stuff. Don't go anywhere, though. We'll be back soon to explore what all this research could mean for us.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about those incredible quantum singularities and how they could change everything, and not just how we think about energy, but maybe some of the biggest mysteries of the universe.
It's wild, right? The idea that we could live without food by just absorbing energy from those QSs, and then on top of that, this model might even connect all the fundamental forces of nature. Mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It is, but let's try to bring it down to earth a bit. Let's say this is all true. How could we actually use this energy? Like, what are the practical applications?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? The research is still mostly theoretical, but it does give us some clues. If this model is right, we could maybe develop technologies that let us directly control QS activity within our own bodies.
So you're talking about something that could, like, tune our cells to specific frequencies. To optimize how they absorb energy or even boost certain biological processes, almost like giving ourselves a targeted energy boost.
Exactly. Imagine being able to target those frequencies to specific organs or tissues, promoting healing, improving brain function, maybe even slowing down aging.
Okay, that sounds, almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
But it also seems risky, right? Messing with our body's energy systems like that, could that have unintended consequences?
You're right. Any new technology comes with potential risks. We'd have to be extremely careful, do rigorous testing, make sure it's both safe and effective. But the potential benefits are so big, it's definitely worth exploring.
I agree. It feels like we're on the verge of something completely new.
Yeah.
But let's get back to that idea of the QSs being connected to all these forces. How does this model link together all four fundamental forces of nature?
It's a bold idea, but here's the gist. The model says that electromagnetism, gravity, the strong force, and the weak force are all fundamentally linked through how charge changes within these quantum singularities. We usually think of charge as a fixed thing for particles, but this model says charge might actually be an emergent property, meaning it can fluctuate.
Wait, so the charge isn't constant, it changes. But how does that connect to all the other forces? It seems like a big leap.
Let's start with electromagnetism. The model suggests that the electric and magnetic fields we see are actually a result of how these QSs pair up their charges. Basically, how they interact determines how strong and what direction the electromagnetic force will have.
So these tiny quantum singularities are like the conductors of the whole electromagnetic orchestra.
Love that analogy. Now, when we talk about gravity, things get even weirder. The model proposes that the density of the charge in a QS, how much is packed in, actually influences the curvature of space-time. And that curvature, that's what we experience as gravity.
Hold on. Are you saying that the more charge a QS has, the stronger its gravitational pull?
That's the basic idea. It's saying gravity isn't just a property of mass, like Einstein's theory said, but also a property of charge.
Wow, that's a completely different way of thinking about gravity. Okay, but how would this model explain those weird things we see with dark energy and gravitational lensing, those things that don't really fit with our current models?
Well, if the density of charge in these QSs can affect gravity, then changes in that density over huge cosmic scales could maybe explain why the universe is expanding faster and faster. That's what we usually call dark energy. And for gravitational lensing, those little bends in light around massive objects, they could be caused by tiny variations in QS charge density along the light's path.
So we're talking about rewriting how we understand the universe, like from the ground up.
Potentially, yeah. But we've only talked about two forces so far. What about the strong and weak forces? Where do those fit in?
Yeah, good point. How does this model incorporate those?
The model says the strong force, the one that holds the nucleus of atoms together, is actually affected by how synchronized the QSs are. So if they're all vibrating together, that affects how strong the strong force is. And as for the weak force, the one responsible for radioactive decay, the model suggests that fluctuations in QSs can change how fast unstable particles decay.
So in this model, these little quantum singularities are like the puppet masters behind everything, all the fundamental forces.
That's a great way to put it. It's saying that all these forces come from how these tiny charge-storing hubs interact and fluctuate, within the very fabric of reality.
This is incredible, but I have to ask, how could we even test an idea this radical? It seems almost impossible to even see these quantum singularities, let alone measure how their charge changes.
It's definitely a challenge, you're right. But the researchers have come up with some ways we might be able to verify it experimentally. One idea is to look for evidence of magnetic monopoles in extreme environments. We talked about black holes earlier, right? Those are a prime spot. Another approach is to look for slight deviations in gravitational lensing that could be explained by these charge link variations in gravity.
So we're looking for tiny clues, little cracks in our current understanding of physics that might point to this underlying QS framework.
Exactly. Like putting together a giant puzzle. Those little anomalies, those could be the missing pieces that show us the true nature of reality.
Okay, this is all so exciting, but honestly a bit overwhelming too. We've gone from food-free living to unifying all the forces of nature. It's clear that this research could totally transform how we understand the universe and our place in it.
It's groundbreaking work, for sure. And while it's still mostly theoretical, the implications are so profound, it just begs to be explored further. It's a reminder that we're only just beginning to grasp the universe and all its mysteries.
On that note, I think we need another break. Give our listeners a chance to absorb all of this. When we come back, we'll dive into the philosophical side of things, what this research could mean for consciousness, free will, even the very nature of reality itself. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey today, exploring this mind-blowing world of quantum singularities and how they could completely change how we understand energy, physics, and even the very nature of reality.
Yeah, we've gone pretty deep down the rabbit hole. We talked about the possibility of living without food, just harnessing energy from QSs. And then we even got into how this model might connect all forces of nature.
It's been a lot to take in. But before we wrap things up, I think we need to zoom out a bit and consider the philosophical implications of all this. We're dealing with some pretty heavy stuff here, ideas that could change how we think about consciousness, free will, even the fabric of reality itself.
Absolutely. If this QS model is right, it brings up some really deep questions. For example, if consciousness is coming from the interaction of these electromagnetic fields and quantum processes in these singularities, does that mean that consciousness isn't just limited to living things?
Whoa, wait, are you saying there could be like some kind of cosmic consciousness out there?
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it? If consciousness is ultimately coming from these fundamental forces, then couldn't it exist in other forms all over the universe? It challenges the idea that we're the only ones with consciousness.
That's a pretty big thought. But what about free will? If our thoughts and actions are all being controlled by these quantum processes, does that mean free will is just an illusion? Are we just robots following a program?
Well, that question has been around for a long time, and this research definitely adds another layer of complexity. If QS activity is completely deterministic, meaning that everything that happens is caused by something that happened before, then it does make you wonder about free will.
So are we just puppets with these quantum singularities pulling the strings?
Not necessarily. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics say that there is some randomness, meaning that not everything is predetermined. That could mean there's still room for some kind of free will, even within the limits of these quantum processes.
So maybe we're not completely controlled by our QSs. There's still a little wiggle room.
Exactly. And even if everything about QS activity is predetermined, it doesn't change our own experience of free will. We still feel like we're making choices, like we're in control.
That's true. Even if we're part of some big deterministic system, we still experience the world as if we have agency. It's kind of a paradox.
It is, and that's what makes all these questions so interesting. They force us to confront the limits of what we know and to consider different perspectives on reality.
Okay, let's talk about reality itself. We've been assuming that this QS model is correct, but what if it's wrong? What if we're totally off base about how the universe works?
Well, that's always a possibility. Science is all about updating our models as we learn more. But even if this specific model about QSs isn't entirely accurate, the questions it raises are still super valuable. It makes us challenge our assumptions about reality and think about other possibilities.
It's like we've opened up a whole Pandora's box of questions. Even if we can't answer them all right now, just asking them helps us understand the universe and our place in it a little bit better.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about this research. It's not just about getting the answers, it's about pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. From living without food to the unification of forces and all the mind-bending philosophical implications, it's been quite a deep dive.
It has. And it's a good reminder that science isn't just about facts and figures, it's about imagination and wonder. It's about the pursuit of knowledge, just for the sake of knowing.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of quantum singularities. We hoped you found it as fascinating as we did. As always, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of the universe. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.